Hello and welcome to our Colonial Holiday Traditions webcast, live from Tryon Palace. This is a sponsored event from the Department of Cultural Resources, funded with a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Thank you for joining us as we look at some of the traditions that made for a cheerful Christmas in the 1700s. Now, Megan Griffin will take you into the kitchen office and tell you what's in store.
Good morning. My name is Megan Griffin and I'm the Director of Education here at Tryon Palace. Tryon Palace is known for being the first permanent state capital of North Carolina. The North Carolina Government House, built between 1767 and 1770 by Royal Governor William Tryon, represented the British Crown and became North Carolina's first permanent capital. During and after the Revolutionary War, the palace played a crucial role in the founding of the new state of North Carolina as home to its elected governors and site of the state legislators' first meetings. A fire destroyed the palace in 1798, but it was never forgotten. More than 150 years later, a new palace rose again on the original foundation, based on archaeological evidence and extensive documentation, including the 18th century architect's plans. Today, you can tour the palace and the grounds along with the North Carolina History Center located just next door. But for today, we are going to be in the kitchen office learning a bit about holiday traditions from the mid-1700s. As we are heading inside, make sure to pull out your packets. Miss Siobhan Fitzpatrick is going to tell us more about holiday traditions, and she will help you answer your questions.
Hello everyone, I'm Miss Siobhan, and before we get started, just a reminder, if you're participating in our Colonial Christmas trivia, you want to get your sheets out now. Now, just like today, not everyone celebrates Christmas. For some people during the colonial period, December 25th passed like any other day. But for those that did celebrate Christmas, the holiday season lasted from December 25th to January 5th, or 12th night. Now, the holiday season was actually composed of many different holidays. There was Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, 12th night, and many others. Which holiday was the most important and how you celebrated depended on where your family was from and what traditions you brought with you. For example, the Hayes, whose house you can visit here at Tryon Palace, they were from Scotland. And during the early 1800s, their big holiday was New Year's Day, and they celebrated with special food, noise making, and gift giving. Another important holiday was John Canoe. That was celebrated by Eastern North Carolina slaves and incorporates African traditions, Caribbean traditions, and European traditions. Now, the only place in all of North America that John Canoe is celebrated is in Eastern North Carolina, but it's also celebrated in other parts of the world, including the Bahamas, Jamaica, and other parts of the Caribbean. Now, normally we tend to think of Christmas as a holiday with a lot of things for children. Taking your photo with Santa, opening presents on Christmas morning. But during the colonial period, Christmas wasn't really geared for children. That's not to say that you weren't encouraged to participate in the holidays. But colonial children were treated very differently from modern children. So how would, say, a 10-year-old have celebrated Christmas during the 1700s? Well, it would have depended on whether you were an apprentice, a student, or living with your family. So let's say you were an apprentice in a shop. What you would have done is you would have put out a Christmas box. And a Christmas box is very much what it sounds like. It's a box decorated for the holidays. And it's a tradition that comes from England. The apprentice or shop boys would have put it out, and they would have collected tips or a holiday tax from their clients. And then they would have divided all of that. And it comes from a much older tradition of the upper class giving to the lower classes. Now, if you were a student during the holidays, and you would have had a table in a classroom very much like this, you weren't guaranteed a holiday break. In many cases, you would have had to have negotiated for your Christmas break. Now imagine that, not being guaranteed a holiday break. So there's a tradition that comes from England called barring out the schoolmaster, where they would have barricaded the teachers out of the building, and then they would have had to have persuaded them for time off. So you know all those persuasive essays you have to write? There's a real reason for them. Now say that you actually were one of the few lucky ones who got to stay with your family during the holiday season. When do you think you would have opened up presents? How many people think it would have been either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? Raise your hands. Okay, now how many people think it would have been either New Year's Eve or New Year's Day? Raise your hands. Now how many people think it would have been the end of the holiday season, that January 5th, 12th night? Raise your hands. Well, everyone who raised their hands for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, you were right. New Year's Day was the big gift-giving holiday during the colonial period. Well, where would you have put all of those gifts? That's the real question. Would you have put them under a Christmas tree? You wouldn't have, because Christmas trees didn't come to the US until the 1820s. And even then, they only appeared in the German regions of Pennsylvania. Most colonial Christmas decorations had to be made from locally grown winter plants. And they would have been very simple decorations, and they would have incorporated things like ivy, mistletoe, holly, and evergreens, like yew, fir, bay, and laurel. You also would have seen two different Christmas flowers. These are plants that actually bloom in winter. There's the Christmas rose, which isn't actually a rose, it's part of the buttercup family. And there's the snowdrop, which is associated with Twelfth Night. Then for the wealthy families, like Governor Martin's and Governor Tryon's, they would have had hothouse fruits, like oranges and lemons. Now I know you're thinking, well, why didn't everyone just go down to the supermarket and pick things up? Well, oranges and lemons were very expensive, so you couldn't just go down to the market and get them. So they were used in special decorations, where you would lay them on serving dishes, on table displays. So think of like if you have a big buffet during the holidays and we usually put flowers in the center of it, they would have used these big displays of fruits. And that way, at the end of the season, you could still eat all of the fruit. Now, you're also probably thinking, well, if they don't have Christmas trees and they're using all these natural decorations, what does everything look like? Well, they still have wreaths, and they still have garlands, and they also use small sprays and plants, like these in the windows. And now I'd like to invite you to head over and meet Mr. Matt, who has a special surprise for you in the kitchen. And as you head into the kitchen, make sure you look for the Christmas ball, which is a special decoration from the colonial period, and it hangs in the kitchen.
Hi guys, like Siobhan said, my name's Matt, and we're here in the governor's kitchen office. This is the hearth room. This is where all the food was made for the governor's table. And I do have a surprise for you. If you'll look up, you'll see a kissing ball. And just like Siobhan described, it's made out of natural materials. And if you know what people do with mistletoe during the holiday season, you know what happened underneath a kissing ball back then. But I like cooking. So why don't you step over here with me and we'll talk about a holiday treat from the governor's time. Come on. We're going to make a 12th night cake. Now, if you know about the 12 days of Christmas, and you remember what Siobhan talked about earlier, Christmas was a 12-day celebration, and the biggest party of that happened at 12th night, the night of January 5th. And there was always a cake. And so you've got in your packet, you've got the recipe to make it, and we're going to show you how here. We're going to start off with butter. This is a half a pound, 2 whole sticks, so you know it's going to be good. And then a 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. Now, powdered sugar is easy for us to get in modern times, But in the governor's time period, if you wanted powdered sugar, you had to grate it off of a sugar cone and then pound it in a mortar and pestle. So it was a lot more work. And what I'm doing here is I am combining the flour and the sugar together. And a lot of times people nowadays will use a mixer or a spoon. You find in a lot of the period cookbooks that they tell you that the best way to do this is to use your hands. I don't know about you, but I enjoy getting dirty in the kitchen. So we're going to combine all of this nice and good. Now, 12th night wasn't just a party night. It was also a chance for families to get together, especially when in places like North Carolina there were a lot of farmers. Families a lot of times had to work through most of the year, and at Christmas or winter, that was the time for everyone to get together. So when the family was all together, a lot of times weddings would happen. And in fact, in 1759, a very important couple got married. George and Martha Washington got married on 12th night back then, and their wedding cake would have been a 12th night cake. So we could still incorporate the butter in here and sugar a little better, but we're just going to kind of move on because we're going to keep on mixing. All right. We're going to have to add spices. Now I have several spices here. We've got ginger, salt, and cinnamon. And this funny looking thing right here is called a nutmeg. Now the nutmeg is actually the seed of an evergreen tree that lives in Indonesia, the Spice Islands. And so we're just going to grate that. Nutmeg was one of the favorite spices back in the 18th century. That looks good enough to me. And we're going to add in the rest of our spices. It's about a half a teaspoon each. A little bit extra ginger because I really like the taste. So we're going to combine all of that in. See, it's starting to turn my butter and sugar kind of a brown, spicy color. Those are the same spices we use in gingerbread. Now we need to add in some eggs. Now my eggs over here to my left are not your normal color. Not all chickens lay white eggs. A lot of folks have seen brown eggs before, but some chickens lay green eggs. Sometimes it depends on the breed of chicken. Sometimes it depends on what the chicken actually is eating. So we're going to add in 4 eggs. Add in my green egg. 2. Three. Last one. 4. And for my 5th egg, we just need the egg yolk. So I'm going to separate it. It's one of my favorite things to do because it's messy. I need to get the yolk, not the white, so I'm going to let the white slip through my fingers. And it kind of looks like snot, doesn't it? All right. 1 yolk. There we go. And to get really messy, we start combining all of this up. Doesn't look like a cake yet, but we're going to work all of the yolk and the whites together because that's going to help. If we can get some air trapped in there, it'll help make our cake nice and light. We can't use things like baking soda or yeast back in the 18th century because we haven't invented them yet. So we mix it all up and try to get some air trapped in there, and when we bake it, the air will expand, and those little pockets of air will help make the cake a little bit lighter. And while we're mixing all this in, we're going to start mixing in the flour. 1.5 cups, just like the sugar. Starting to look like cake dough batter. Now, at 12th night, it being a big party, they had a tradition. Sometimes they would bake a bean and a pea into the cake. And the person who found the bean, the man who found the bean, would be the king, and the woman who found the queen, the pea, would be the queen. I'm sorry, got a little tongue-tied there. Now, sometimes they didn't use the bean and the pea. What would happen is if you came into the party, you'd get to pick a card, and those cards had characters on them. And there would be a king and a queen. Now, the king got to call all the shots for the night. He could decide what dances people were going to do or what games people were going to play. The queen, well, it basically meant she got to make the cake and host the party next year. So, all right. Now, a 12th night cake is a rich cake. Sometimes in the cookbooks you see them called a great cake. And because people sometimes use them for their wedding cakes, you'll see them as bride cakes as well. But they have other things inside them. It's not just a batter. So we're going to add in a half a cup of almonds. Get those folded in all nice. And we're going to add in raisins. And they would also add other fruits as well, fruits that they had preserved. Candied orange peel is really nice in here. Some of those things are hard to come by nowadays unless you make them at home yourself. And we're going to add in just a little bit of apple cider. Okay. So get all of this mixed up. We've got a nice looking cake batter here. I'm going to rinse off my hands really quickly because the next part of my job is to get this cake in a mold. I'm going to rinse my hands. Now, in order to keep it from sticking to the mold, I'm going to take a little bit of butter. I'm going to grease up the inside of my mold. And you can use just a plain cake pan if that's all you have. That's perfectly fine. They like to make 12th night cakes fancy looking, sometimes just with a mold. Sometimes they would actually they would ice them. And their icing was kind of like a marshmallow. And you can even tint it pink using ground up cochineal, which is a type of bug. So we're going to pour, let's get the right angle here, this into the mold. This is kind of a heavy cake, but it tastes really good. Wish you could smell all these spices right now. That's most of it. Make sure it's kind of even in the mold. And then I'm going to rinse my hands off one more time because the next thing we've got to do is bake this cake. Now, if you look over to my right here on the wall, you'll see the type of oven that the governor would have. It's called a beehive oven. And it takes 4 hours to heat up and 8 hours to cool down. It's 8 hours of baking time. So they would only do their baking usually every other day. But let's say that Her Excellency, Mrs. Governor, decided that she wanted a 12th night cake at the last minute. Then they would have to bake it by taking a Dutch oven. And what we would do is take the coals from the fire. My fire's just getting started today, so it doesn't have enough coals right here at the moment. But we take the coals out of the fire with a shovel, and we put them in a ring on the ground, put the Dutch oven down, open it up, and grab our cake, put it inside the oven, put the top on, and then we put more coals on the top of the oven. And that's going to surround it with an even heat. It bakes just like your oven at home. And if I do it right, it actually ends up being around 325 degrees, just like most cake recipes call for. Now, we don't have enough time to wait for the cake to bake, so we actually had one done earlier. So there is a nice 12th night cake. Like I said, sometimes they would be iced. This looks good enough to eat, so I might just have some time with this. And cooking was really important with holiday traditions. So was crafting and making those gifts. So I'm going to send you into the servants' hall to work with Miss Catherine.
Good day to you. Welcome to the Servants' Hall. I'm Mrs. Bennett, and today I'm going to show you how to craft a chapbook. In the 18th century, children did not receive traditional presents the way we do today. They received small gifts, usually in the form of sweets or perhaps some change or a little booklet, and these were usually given on New Year's Day, not on Christmas Day. Well, today our little chapbook project is going to be an interesting learning experience for you. Our chapbook is a journal, and in the 18th century, children did not keep private journals. They used their little journals to record their progress. And I hope that's what you'll do with your little chapbook when you've finished it today. If you were learning how to write, for example, or if you were learning how to compose a story, you would do that in your little chapbook and share that with your parents to show them your learning progress. So let's go on now and continue with our project. Now you have a template which has the Tryon Palace logo. Happy New Year from Tryon Palace. This is going to become a little book. The first thing you want to do is place your paper face down with the printed side on your flat surface. And we're going to fold that paper long ways along the lines that are inscribed on the paper here, like so. Open up your template, place it face down on the table, and fold it this way, right on that line, right where I'm folding it, right there. Open your template, turn this piece in to the center portion, folding on the line again, and turn this piece in. Now you'll see there's a little bit of an overlap right here of about 1/4 of an inch. You want to take your scissors and let's trim that off, just like that. And don't worry if it's not perfect. There we go. Now, open all these pieces that are folded. Fold it in half again so that it looks like this. You'll see a very bold line right here. Take your scissors and cut right on that bolded line, right to the middle line, just like I just did. Now here comes the tricky part. You want to open and do this. You see where your lines are, where I have my fingers aligned. And we're going to fold it into a little star. And you might have to just coax it a little bit. Sometimes that happens. Now you'll see the cover of the book. You want to place that on your table. And then, again, you may have to just coax it a little bit. Line up your lines where your book pages will be. Fold that cover. And we have our little journal, our chapbook. Early gift books refer to themselves as Christmas boxes, and that harkens back to the time of apprentices who would put out Christmas boxes. And an example of that is Nurse Truelove's Christmas box from 1786. The word present was incorporated into the title of gift books later on, and they were usually advice manuals given from parents to their children as a means of self-improvement, and also from the upper class to their serving class, so that they could learn skills and as a means, again, of self-improvement. Chapbooks are small, little books like this. They often were tales of moral tales and fables for children to learn as part of their growing process. And also, the paper in this time period was very, very expensive. And so chapbooks would be very small and very precious. if you should receive a gift of a book or you should give a gift of a book, this is something that would have been very, very special in this time period. Now, the Christmas stories that we associate with Christmas mostly appeared in the Victorian times, which were in about a century from our time period here at Tryon Palace. And those usually came in the form of a ghost story. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Story, A Christmas Carol, was written in 1843, and that sets the tone for our modern Christmas today. I hope you've enjoyed our little project this morning. I hope you'll enjoy your little chapbook and your journal, and I hope you'll enjoy sharing it with your parents and your friends. It's a very special little gift. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, we hope that you've enjoyed your webcast so far. We've had a good time. Now we're going to ask some questions. So we will start answering the questions that some of you have submitted. All right. So can someone tell us about Christmas trees?
Well, Christmas trees first arrived in the U.S. around the 1820s, and they were brought over by German immigrants. So you first really see them in the German regions of Pennsylvania, and they slowly start making their way south. The first tree that we actually have documented evidence of appearing south of Pennsylvania is in Virginia in 1842, and it was put up by a German-born teacher at the College of William and Mary for the children of one of the other teachers there.
Okay, can someone tell us about the machine on the chain?
I think that'd be me. All right, so for those of you guys who aren't crazy about going to school, you're in luck. In Governor Tryon's time, there's no laws that say the kids have to go to school. And boys about 9 to 14, this machine here could have been part of your job. You would have been a spit boy. That doesn't mean you're paid to spit. What it means is that you're in charge of keeping the meat that the governor is roasting from burning. And so this machine is to help you out. It's called a clock jack. And so you would put the key here, and as you turn this, it's going to raise up the weight. It's right down here. Now I'm not going to raise it up all the way, just enough to show you guys what's going on. And once you raise the weight up all the way, you're going to give this wheel here at the top a spin. That's going to turn these gears, which is going to pull the chain, which will turn the wheel at the bottom, which will turn the meat that's on the spit, on the forks, down here by the fire. Now, they didn't just have clock jacks as a type of machine to work a spit. They also had something called a smoke jack, which had a big fan blade up in the chimney. And so as the smoke went by the fan blade, it would turn that, which would pull the gears that would turn the meat. They even had a special breed of dog called a turn spit. It was a type of terrier. He was low, long, and they said he didn't look very happy, but if you're running all your time when you're working to keep meat turning, I don't think you would be either. They don't have turn spit dogs anymore because no one has the machines that they used on. They would run on a treadmill or something like a big hamster wheel that was mounted on the wall.
Okay. Let's talk about what you're wearing. Some people have wondered about some things. So both Ms. Catherine and Mr. Matt, will y'all tell us about what you're wearing?
Yes, I'm wearing what's called an English gown. In the back, you'll see there are some pleats and a little bustle affair. This was the style in the 1770s. I have under my English gown, which is an open robe in the front, a petticoat. In our time period, a petticoat was worn on the outside. We wear several layers of them. Of course, I have my apron on and my kerchief. A lady of my, a married lady, shall I say, would most likely wear a kerchief as modesty. On top, I have a cap. Most ladies wore caps. They kept their heads covered during the day. And on my pen ball here, I have my scissors, my pen ball, and my little needle case as part of my equipage that I would use should I be doing mending or embroidery during the day.
And I'm dressed like an 18th century working guy. So I've got my apron. Now, men's aprons are different than women's aprons. You saw Catherine's only came up halfway. Now, ladies had full aprons, but they would pin theirs to the top. I just put mine through one of the buttons on my waistcoat. My vest is called a waistcoat, and actually because it's cold today, I have on basically 18th century long underwear. It's another waistcoat on underneath. I've got a neck cloth. I've got breeches. They come down to my knees. And I've got stockings. Now, fancy people would wear their stockings underneath their breeches. Sometimes country folk would pull them over the top. And so that's what I'm doing there today. And most people, when they think about hats in the 1770s, they think of the tricorn hats. A lot of times gentlemen, military men are wearing those. If you're a working guy, I don't need that. So I've got a soft cap to wear. It keeps me proper. A gentleman's supposed to wear a hat. But this one doesn't get in the way, and it actually forms to my head quite nicely.
All right. Ms. Siobhan, will you tell us where they would have purchased Christmas gifts?
Most Christmas gifts were actually made at home, so you would have spent time during the course of the year creating your Christmas gifts. The one set of gifts, though, that you would have had to have purchased would have been the books. So you would have gone to the printers, and there you would have gotten the individual sheets. But then you would have gone to a bookbinders, and the bookbinders would have bound the sheets together. So it's not like today where you could go out to a store and get all your gifts, or even go to a bookstore and get an already pre-bound book. You had to go to two different places, and first select the book that you wanted and have it printed, and then go to a bookbinder and have it bound.
All right, we have a question about Santa. Can we learn about how Santa may have been a part of Colonial Christmas, or even was he?
That's a good question. Santa Claus was not a part of Colonial Christmas. He did not start coming and bringing presents to children until the 19th century here in the U.S.
Okay, we have a question about the lady in the corner. Can someone explain what she's doing in the corner?
This is actually one of our other interpreters here, Joey. Joey is working on a tape loom. And Joey, would you like to explain a little bit more of what's going on there?
Certainly. I'm making a tape, which is like a ribbon today, and you use these to tie things on like your clothes or tie things together. I'm making one with a pattern, so this could be used as trimming on a gown or a suit. This is just very simple weaving where you have two sets of threads that are, one is fixed, one is sliding up and down, and you use this shuttle to take another thread back and forth between them to bind them together.
Okay, I think we have one more question. This one is for Mr. Matt. Do you like cooking and getting your hands messy?
I really enjoy cooking and getting my hands messy. Now, I have to wash my hands a lot because depending on the step, sometimes it's not great to, get the batter all over your mold and those sorts of things. But it's actually my favorite way to mix things. Now, I'll even do it at home sometimes.
Okay, and actually we just had one more question submitted. Someone wanted to know about how they wrapped gifts.
Some gifts would have been wrapped with a little bit of natural material, but most gifts would have actually just been brought and handed to the recipient. Gift wrap was not very popular, and Christmas cards did not exist during the colonial period. They did not come in until the Victorians. So, had you been a kid during the colonial period, you wouldn't have had to have worried about sending out Christmas cards.
All right, thank you so much for joining our webcast today. We've had a lot of fun, and I hope that you've enjoyed listening about Tryon Palace. If you want to come visit us, you can do that at any time, but specifically if you'd like to learn more about a colonial holiday, we have two special nights in December called a Candlelight Christmas, Eve of Revolution, and those are on December 13th and December 20th. There's more information on our website, but tickets are already available, so please visit us at any time, but specifically on those dates if you'd like to learn more. Now we're going to see Lorraine for just a minute before we say goodbye.
We at the Department of Cultural Resources appreciate you spending some time with us. We hope you had fun. If you would like to learn more about things going on with the department during Christmas, visit our website at ncculture.com and have a happy holiday.